So I was a cowboy when I first started, an undercapitalized goober that had no idea what I was doing and trading with cash advances on credit cards. So that's the epitome of a noob. So trust me, I've been there. I know what some of the silly stuff you guys have done, taking chances and trying to do what you got to do to make it work. But then when you look back, you really didn't do all the best in terms of trying to make it work. You were simply gambling. So I told him today, I said, I don't want you to walk away from the charts. I want you to be here until fatigue sets in. I want you to feel that. I want you to be uncomfortable. And I still want you to tell me why you're pushing the button. Why do you think it's going up? Why do you think it's going to go down? He had the classic scenario where he tried to buy it several different times today, and there was no fair value gap there. There was no reason for it to go up there, and he still would just push the button. And then we got into the lunch hour, and I could tell he was just mentally fatigued by it. He's like, I don't know what to expect, so I'm just going to push the button and see what happens. I said, that's what I've been waiting for. That moment right there, that's what blew every single combine that you tried to do. That moment, I want you to know what that feels like. Because what you're trying to do right before you do that execution, that's your root problem. That's the thing that's going to keep popping up in your head, that's going to cause you to do that same impulsive tendency to push a button to find out. I want to do it right, and then you say, good job. Okay, that's normal. Every kid wants to have that moment with their dad. But really, what are you trying to do? He goes, I want to be right because I did a terrible job of trying to do it before, and now you're watching me. Like you're sitting right next to me, where I didn't do that the last time, Dad. I was doing it in my privacy, in my own bedroom. I'm pushing the button and nobody's there watching it. So it didn't feel embarrassing. I was mad. Okay, that's normal. That's absolutely normal. But you have to understand that these things that you're feeling are going to be very influential in terms of what you do going forward. Because let's say we get you to the point where you can trade, and Dad doesn't need to be next to you. What are you going to do to unravel yourself? It's going to be these things. So you have to view them as, well, snares. They're traps, okay? And there's no shame in identifying what they are and what they're triggering, bases or foundations are rooted on. That's the thing that you need to be aware of. Everybody has them. Everyone has them. Some of you listening right now, it might be the fact that you don't have a partner or a spouse that's supportive of what you're doing, and you simply just want to make money to prove it and shove it down their throat and say, see, this is the reason why I got to look at all these charts. I got to listen to this goober go on and on and listen to his rants, because this shit will work if I just submit to it. That's why you're doing it. You're trying to prove to them in an expedient manner that it's worth your time doing it, when they don't think it's worth their time waiting around for you to figure out whether or not you can do it or not, when they've already had it in their mind that you ain't going to be successful at it. So I understand how to balance all that stuff is very difficult. But he, as my son, he's got youth on his side. He has time on his side. But because of video game playing and the tendency to play these games, and when you get killed in the game, oh, well, there's no time and no real loss. Let me just respawn and there it is. Or I got to wait the time limit for the game to conclude and a new game will start up. So that's the mindset that he has. And that to me is why I think viewing trading as a video game is the stupidest fucking idea anybody could ever employ. Because it tricks you into thinking, well, all I gotta do is respawn. You can do that when you're doing market replay. You can do that when you're demo trading. But when you're trying to do something like a combine, if it's a funded account approach that you're going, or if you're trying to trade with real money, whether it be a lot of money or a little bit of money, those rules don't apply. You have to treat this like a business. When you go to work, okay, when you go to work, do they let the employees that you work among do whatever the hell they want to do? Now, maybe at McDonald's, they might do that shit, but they ain't doing it generally in a Fortune 500 company. And there's some structure there. There's some limits and boundaries as how far you can misbehave or waste time or be inefficient. And you are the boss. You're the CEO. You are the human resource manager. You're in charge of everything of you incorporated. So you have to have all of these hats as a trader. You're the analyst, you're the trader, and you are the person that is in charge of where you're going. You're it. You're at the helm, you're the captain, and you either sink or sail based on what you and your decisions result in. So if you go into it with the Mickey Mouse approach that, hey, let's see what happens, what they say, F around and find out. The longer you F around, you're going to eventually find out. And he found out rather quickly that he couldn't do what he thought it was. Oh, it's a video game. It's a video game. It's just like, it's like that game, that snake game, because I used the analogy before. Slither IO, I think that's what it is, or something like that, or Snake IO. Where this little snake you start out with, you go around and you get these little dots. Some of the dots are bigger, some of them are smaller. And as you eat these things on the game, your body as a snake grows larger, and you're not allowed to touch another snake. You can't touch their body, but you can make them run into yours, and then they disintegrate and you can eat them. Or you can't run into a wall or you die. So there's two simple rules there. The larger you get, the harder it gets. That's the same thing with trading. The things that you can do with a very small account, you can be very nimble with a very small account. Less than $50,000, less than $100,000. You can do a whole lot of stuff with an account like that. When you start trading with $50 million and higher, you just can't do those types of things. You have to be a lot more reserved in what you're trying to do, and you got to be more aware of what you're trying to protect. In the beginning, it's a little bit of money. It's 2% ain't that much. It's not that much. So I sat down with him today. I said, listen, one of the best things you can do is appreciate the fact that your first trade, whether you were right or wrong about the reason why you get it, I don't care about that. The fact that you saw and you identified that $244 is more than half of your net bring home pay per week at your job. So I want you to think about that when you go to work and you're looking around at the people that irritate you, the people that aren't doing as much as you are. You choose to be there because you haven't done the work. And I reminded him all the times when he was younger. I said, those videos are there. You watch them. And when you have questions, I will sit down with you. Nope. Video games was the only thing he was interested in sports. So I waited around. When he became of age where he can work, I made him get a job. He's had a job since he was legally allowed to do so. And now, because he has a girlfriend, because she's going away to college, she won't be here after August. So he'll have to wait for her to come home. She wants to be a veterinarian. And here he is working the typical teenager job. And he feels even more pressure on what he did not do correctly. So he has all those things swirling in his head. What happens when she comes home and he hasn't made any progress? I said, that's good that you think that, but don't let these things be crippling or a source of anxiety, because that in itself will cause you to do things impulsively. If you don't spend the right amount of time while she's going away to pursue her professional career, whether or not she makes it or not is irrelevant. She may get out there and decide that it ain't the right profession for her. Or she may get out there and say, the hell with this, I ain't doing it. I'll just work a regular job. That's her decision. But you can't allow those things, just like you listening can't allow the pressures and stresses of your job. Or maybe you got fired. Maybe you've been made redundant and you don't have a job right now and you're between gainful employment. And that's stressful. In that event, you shouldn't be trying to trade. Just practice, because you're not going to do the right things in that state of mind, because you're going to try to do anything you can to make yourself feel better about the situation you're in, and just feel like, oh, why am I worried about all this? I can make $1,000 in one day trading, over leveraging without a stop loss, and just get lucky gambling. You won't say it that way, but that will be the reality of it if you're right, if you're correct about trading in those conditions. So when I sat down with him today and told him, I said, listen, we're going to think about how a $50,000 account, I know you said you were going for that $150,000 account. Okay. And you were trying to prove to dad, you were going to go on the internet and piss all over my trolls and like, you have to defend me, which you don't. I want you to think about a $50,000 account. And I want you to think about 1.5% risk of that. That's the highest you can ever go. You can never go above 1.5%. Now, if you go out and look at these funded accounts, they allow you more than that. Not by much. I think it's like 2%. But I told him, you are not allowed to go over 1.5%. Because if you go over 1.5%, you failed. In my eyes, I'm your dad. I'm telling you, you fucking failed. Not just, I messed up. You fucking failed. You took that on. You did it yourself. You chose to fail. It didn't happen to you. You chose it. The reason why he was blowing it, trying to do the 150,000, because he was trying to trade with the maximum amount of contracts. Just because they're offering it to you doesn't mean you should do it. So I sat with him today and I said, look, I want you to think about what 1% looks like on a $50,000 account. That's still more than you make all week long. What happens if you sit down and you make that in one day? How would that make you feel? Just one day? Yeah, one day. That's what I said. One day. What does that make you feel like? He said, oh, I would want more than that. I said, why? You're not making that right now. You work all week long around these insufferable people that come through the location where he works at. And where I live at, there's this snootiness, okay? That everybody thinks they're better than everybody up here. Okay, and it's, believe me, it's ridiculous. Like it's nonsensical the way they all act up here. And if you go into a place of service and a person's waiting on you, if you're going in there too and you're patronizing a place like, you know, where my son works at, he works at a coffee shop. It's a Starbucks, and it's just unbelievable hearing some of the stories. He comes home over the year and a half he's been, you know, it's just crazy here, these entitlement-minded people. And they come in, they talk to you like, you know, you're less than human. That $500, if you can make that one day per week, you've replaced the whole need to go to that place. And you're not even pushing it hard. You're not even pushing it hard. You're not pushing hard to break the account. You're not pushing hard to feel like you got to keep up with some level of measurement. Somebody on the internet's doing this much, I got to do that. You don't have to look at my videos where I'm trading all those contracts and building up a large position. You ain't got to do $12,000. You ain't got to do $16,000 and $20,000, $30,000 days. You don't need to do those. You can get to those, but you have to grow into making $200 and saying, okay, $200. That's your whole week and a half right there with one transaction. That's how I got hooked on this. In the 90s, I got hooked on that because my pay was less than $300 a week. Bring home. And I was thinking to myself, man, if I could just do one bond trade per week and just get half of a point, if I could just get lucky enough to find 16 ticks 16 ticks on one contract in the bond market. That's $500. That's better than going to work. And once I do it, I don't have to do it again because I'm scared to trade, right? Well, that was my whole approach going in, easing into it. And I sat down with him, I explained this whole thing to him today. I said, I was afraid to get into it when I was in the 90s. I mean, it was exciting, but still scary. Like, I don't ride roller coasters. I think they're thrilling to watch other people go nuts and throw their guts up and scream and, probably blow out an intestine and guttural, screams as they go down the deepest part of the decline. But I would never get on those things. I don't like them. I have to be in control. I have to be in control of me, the environment that I'm in, and that is not something I would do. And I don't want to treat my trading like that. So I have to be very methodical about what it is I'm looking for. And the way I teach you as my students, I teach that same approach. We're not gambling. We're not inviting happenstance. Okay, so I told him, I said, you're going to trade until you get fatigued. And then as soon as you are you just don't know why you're doing it, you just push the button to find out, okay, what happens. That moment, that's what I was waiting for. And I explained to him, I said, that's where everybody blows it. Everybody blows it. At that moment, it's because you have either hurt your account, someone has hurt your feelings or made you angry, or you're sick, or something cost you money that was unexpected. You are using that moment to replace some kind of negative thing that you're going through. Or maybe not even experiencing it yet, but you're afraid of it. You're afraid if something happens, it's looming in the offing. What happens if my girlfriend? What happens if my wife? What happens if my husband leaves me? Well, I won't feel so bad if I can make $1,000 today. When really you'll still hurt because you have emotional commitment to that. Whatever that thing might be. It might not even be a relationship. It might be some kind of I don't even know. It could be a number of things. But a what-if thinking scenario of something negative, something harmful that may happen to you could be a very triggering thing for you to get into a trade that has no real sound reason to be in it. And you're looking at it with the expectation, if it pays out, this is a better use of my time than sitting around worrying about something that may or may not even happen. And I have done that. And I have blown accounts in a 20-year-old mindset. I was fearful of a lot of things that never fucking happened. I had so many unrealistic fears. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? And none of it ever happened. It never happened. But they were so overwhelming to me at the time that it forced me to take on trades and take on risk, hoping that if I got paid out correctly on the other side of that trade, at least it was better than me sitting there twiddling my thumbs in fear of what may not or may come. The uncertainty of what if thinking is paralyzing. But when it's not paralyzing, it's the instigation to take you into a gambling environment. Think about it. I promise you, if you do some serious soul searching, you could go back to those times where you blew your accounts, where you've done serious damage and drawdown in your accounts. You've probably many times been in that same circumstance and not even realized it. And the only way I identified it is because I was journaling it. And these same circumstances kept coming up when I blew the account. These things were there. So at the time, they don't feel like they're all that impactful. They're not the real problem. When they are.